Welcome to the Global Missions Podcast, a program for Christ followers who want to participate more effectively in God's work, both at home and to the ends of the earth. Visit us at globalmissionspodcast.com to find show notes, resources, and previous episodes, or to suggest a particular topic or guest you would like to hear featured on the program. You can also engage with us through Twitter and Facebook. We would love to hear from you. And now, here's your host, Rob Magwood, better known to his friends as Mags.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode. In Acts chapter 18, we learn that the Apostle Paul arrives in the city of Corinth and joins together with Aquila and Priscilla. Verse 3 reads like this, "And being of the same occupation, Paul stayed with them and worked, for they were tent makers by trade." Tent making is the occupation that Paul engaged in to support himself financially while he served as a missions worker. Today we'll be talking with Ray Chow about this, tent making, but tent making in the modern world. Before we get to this interview, we'd like to share with you this missions resource.
Mark your calendars. November 6th and 13th, 2016 are the International Days of Prayer for the Persecuted Church. Join with believers around the world praying for our brothers and sisters who are salt and light in difficult places. Visit www.idop.org for prayer requests, resources, and more information. And now, here's today's interview.
Hi again, everyone. I am pleased to welcome you to today's interview. Our guest is Ray Chow. And for those of you that haven't had a chance to meet Ray, he currently lives in Toronto, Ontario, and serves as Executive Director of Global Services for the Evangelical Alliance mission, known to some of us as TEAM. Ray joined TEAM's global leadership a few years ago in 2014 after spending many years in various senior management roles, most recently as a partner with Ernst & Young in Greater China, based in Taipei, Taiwan. His current responsibilities include helping TEAM to globalize their services and operations to continue to help churches everywhere send missionaries everywhere. He is passionate about developing future leaders and realizing the potential of working together across organizations for kingdom purposes. Ray, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Max. Looking forward to our time together.
Yeah, me too. Just as we begin, would you take just a minute or two and introduce yourself and tell us a bit about how you came to be passionate about God's mission?
I think we first felt a calling or prompting to missions as young students at Urbana. But what my understanding of what that looked like has evolved over time. We originally thought that saying yes to God and saying yes to missions meant exploring full-time vocational ministry, explored campus ministry, and that was our background, and conversion faith experience. But God led me to over almost 20 years of workplace ministry and learning to live out my faith in the workplace. And that's a big part of our background. We first got into, was exposed to overseas cross-cultural ministry through short-term ministry, and that led us to pursuing opportunities in Asia. But it wasn't what we expected. It was through my vocation as an accountant, as a consultant in the business world. My wife, Sandra, pursued that through her vocation as a teacher in the Christian and Missionary School. And that leads us to some of how we end up today with TEAM, where, just as we felt we figured out what it looks like to serve God in the marketplace, God said, "Hey, now I want you to take some of those skills and experiences and contribute to full-time vocational ministry." And we're excited and honored to be part of TEAM and working with across organizations to see how do we participate in missions today? What does that look like?
Mm-hmm. Well, I know that your organization has spoken appreciatively of how your skill set has come into the organization. Scott has mentioned this in particular, and we thank the Lord that he brought you to this place at this time. Today, our topic will go a little to your background then, those 20-some years that you mentioned. we're going to talk about this idea of tent making. And let's just begin by defining the term. What is tent making? What do we mean when we use this term?
Well, tent making obviously is not a new concept. It wasn't something that we made up or we coined, but it is something that is, I would say, has been accepted or defined in different ways, at least in the missions world. So I would say tent making really is believers with an intentional commitment to gospel witness and using their profession in that way. So that could be in a global cross-cultural context, but frankly, it could also be in a local context. But it's that intentionality to use all of your profession, all of your skills, all of your experiences in the workplace intentionally.
And why is it needed? Why do you think it's important?
Well, I think it's needed for a number of reasons. I think there's the changing landscape of missions, and some traditional, certainly our organization would have a number of missionaries who have gone this path, and it's a legitimate path. But the message of leaving your vocation and preparing yourself, raising funds, going cross-culturally to become a full-time vocational minister, church planter, discipler, missionary. That might not be the only way, or in some cases the appropriate way for people. So I think the changing landscape of missions, where maybe it's traditional missionaries may not have the funds, the context to do this. Globalization, I think, creates a whole host of new opportunities. Young people especially are very much open to working overseas and have opportunities that I think previous generations would not have had. So this is an excellent opportunity for individuals to choose where they want to live out their faith, where they want to live incarnationally. It could happen as effectively in Toronto, but some may choose to go to other places, whether that's like Shanghai, China, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, other places around the world where certainly the gospel is needed.
So I'm wondering, should we see it as a replacement for traditional missions or as a complement?
Absolutely not as a replacement. I see this as an alternative pathway. And certainly this alternative pathway is not new, but I think certainly I experienced this as a tent maker, as a professional going overseas, and we get this feedback a lot, there's a richness in the church and global missions community of experience, resource, connections. But if we're honest, these are designed for a different type of person. It's designed for that full-time vocational minister. Mm-hmm. It's not designed, the rhythms, the content, the framing, it's not designed for those who are spending most of their time in most of their day in a workplace context, a marketplace mm-hmm. context.
Mm-hmm. So is there a difference between a tent maker and someone who is a Christ follower who's simply living and working overseas?
I think it's a bit of a tricky question. I think in an ideal world, no, if you're fully living out your life incarnationally, missionally, intentionally, then absolutely not. I think we have an opportunity to represent Christ and to make a transformational impact on our workplace or communities that we live in. But I think that when I'm thinking about tent makers, when we're thinking about supporting tent makers, is those who have that intentionality, and I would say intentionality is the primary distinguishing factor, is that they are looking for accountability and resources, and how can they be more effective and connected. As you know, as most of our listeners would know, I would say a tent maker going cross-culturally would have many of the similar challenges as a missionary, a traditional, right. Fully funded missionary going cross-culturally.
I wonder, Ray, what advice you might have for a church or for a missions committee that would like to help their church identify people in their church who might serve as tent makers.
I think there's a number of things. The first is wrestling with whether the church sees this as a legitimate, appropriate way to engage in what the church defines as their mission program or their mission approach.
Right.
So for example, we encounter a number of churches, and we have tent makers who are living their life intentionally, sacrificially, choosing to go to more difficult places, but going as an engineer, a teacher, an accountant, etc. But their church doesn't have a category. In some churches, they don't have a peg on their mission board to say, hey, this is a person or a couple, a family that the church is sending out to be a missionary or salt and light to the world, etc. So I think the first is wrestling with, is there a category, is there a space for this? From there, there's many of the things that I would expect a good mission program would be doing already would apply to this group as well. So discipleship, encouragement, helping the congregation members build gospel-centered lives. And so what I've been surprised and pleasantly surprised is to see as when churches start to see this, as churches and their church members start to see this as an appropriate pathway or an alternative pathway, then they see possibilities open up that they've never seen before. So people start. We've seen individuals say, "Hey, Mike, I work for a multinational company, and there's opportunities for international transfers. I've turned down opportunities because I didn't see how this could be a calling or a legitimate pathway or what the church would view about this. But now that the church is behind this and seeing this as a legitimate pathway, it opens up a completely different conversation."
Do you find that's a difficult step for some churches to go from the vocational religious worker to open some of these doors?
I'm not sure if it's a difficult step, but I think it's a new conversation.
Mm.
I would encourage asking those questions, having that dialogue. Be happy to be involved with your church to have that dialogue, to explore stories of what does this practically look like. Can someone be effective on something as short as a 2 or 3 year assignment? How is this similar but different to the traditional missionaries that we support? Can tent makers be effective in the same way? What's the role for them?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, when we think about the role of home churches for a mission worker, someone who's serving in a cross-cultural context, often a major part of the church's role is assisting with finances, financial support, either raising that support or providing that support for missions. In the case of tent making, if a worker is already receiving a salary from a company or from another business operation, how can a church help support a tent maker while they're serving overseas?
Good question. Many of the support needs are very similar to traditional missionaries, perhaps without the financial support. So absolutely prayer, the home sending church community, getting behind this person, caring for this person from a distance, keeping this person accountable. Where we come alongside and work with the church is, again, very similar to what you would expect for a traditional missionary. But what are those training or equipping needs? How do we resource this person to be successful as they move to a cross-cultural or sometimes even more difficult place? How do we connect them with people and a community on the ground so that they're more effectively connecting into ministry and fellowship and community as they land? How are we connecting them to like-minded people?
And when they return home, some of their needs would also be similar?
Yes, absolutely. So, as an example, working on international assignments, working as expats is not new. There's more and more North Americans, Canadians, Americans, every day, every year, taking on these international assignments. But we see the value of helping them debrief, acclimatize back to their home culture, helping their church understand their experience and what's happened. So absolutely, a debriefing process is critical.
Mm-hmm. Well, many classical mission workers, or what we might call traditional missionaries, are sent through mission agencies, mission organizations. Do tent makers go out through these organizations as well? And if so, why or why not?
Yeah, this hits on a topic of what I'm personally passionate about, and maybe I'll take a sidebar and share a little bit about our own experience.
Sure.
Where when my wife and I went to Asia, we had supported missionaries, we knew mission agencies, we valued and desired accountability and training, and personally talked to a number of agencies, and I'll be transparent and say including Team, the organization that I work for, and while Team and other organizations have worked with tent makers in the past, their systems and language and rhythms of life just didn't fit with what we were doing. I was going to Taiwan to work in an accounting firm, and the ministry needs and opportunities was a camp ministry, and a prayer meetings Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. and these type of things where I understood why they were important, but I just didn't fit with the rhythm of my life. So in terms of your question on do they go out with mission agencies, I think the mission agency, or let's maybe more broadly say the mission world, has valuable insights and experiences and mentors, support services that just like they help the traditional missionary be well prepared and holistically healthy, the same principles and needs would apply to the tent maker. But how do we come about and reframing them, pivoting them, if you may, to support this group? And what we're finding is, as the needs are so diverse and so complex, that it's very difficult to impossible for an individual agency to be able to meet these needs. The positive side is it's forcing us to collaborate. So these are workers, Christians who are already out there. I believe that there are many Christians who are already out there doing this, exercising this. I also believe that, to our earlier question, that if the church saw this as a legitimate pathway, there could be more engaged and literally to the corners of the world. So how do we come together as the mission world, the mission agency world, to say, how do we pool our experiences and know-how and connections to come together to serve this group?
Well, it sounds to me like you're suggesting that the mission agencies need to be learners in this situation. There are things to be learned, and there are things to be collaborated on as well. Ray, I wonder if someone is, listening to this interview and they're interested in exploring tent making further, what would be some of the first steps they should take to move in that direction?
I think depending on where you are in the stage of your career, keep developing your professional skills. Don't quit your profession. Look for those opportunities to build international experience or experiences that would be attractive to an international placement. We're just in the early stages, but looking to launch a network with a website and resources that will help some of your listeners explore what could this mean? How could I talk to my church about this? Or maybe a mission pastor or mission committee members listening. We want to be able to come alongside of your church and work through some of these questions to explore what does it look like if our congregation members are connected globally. So those are some of the first steps. There's certainly books and resources and conversations that we could recommend. I can certainly leave my email address. It's ray.chow, ray.chow@team.org. And for those of you interested in resources about what does it look like to be a vocational professional tent maker cross-culturally, I can keep you updated on resources as we develop them. We're looking to launch a Facebook and website to gather these type of resources. What we're doing is piloting with a number of organizations, a mission organizations, a program to come alongside of professionals. So if you're a listener out there who's already doing this or has done this, we want to hear from you. We want to learn from you as we look to collectively develop or source or pivot services and resources to come alongside tent makers. We want to make sure we're serving people well. One of the most critical needs that we see is to have a team on the ground. And if we don't have a team on the ground to be with the tent maker or for the tent maker to join, then at the very least, we do want a mentor coach. And so we are looking for, and we have found a number of professionals, tent makers who are intentionally living cross-culturally, already working in the international community that are interested in coming alongside of people who are exploring what this looks like or people who are ready to go.
Well, appreciate the opportunity that you've presented to listeners. If you are interested in learning more about this, you'll find Ray's contact information in the show notes on the website as well. And we'll include any links there to resources that he recommends as well, so you can go to one place and at least have a starting point there. Ray, appreciate you've already shared your email address, inviting listeners to be in touch if they'd like to learn more with you. Thanks for doing that. And thanks for cracking open this topic with us of tent making. It's obviously a big topic, lots to be said, lots to learn still, but appreciate your sharing how you're moving forward and your willingness to go with either individuals or with church committees. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Well, we hope that you have been informed further by our conversation today with Ray. Tent making is a great avenue of potential ministry in the modern world. Remember that if you've been driving or riding while listening to the program, or if you missed any of the links or resources that Ray mentioned, you can find them in the show notes on the website at globalmissionspodcast.com. We also invite you to participate in the conversation with us. You can reach us through the website or the Facebook page or the Twitter feed. We always welcome your encouragement and suggestions for the podcast. That's it for today. The Global Missions Podcast is produced by the Jaffrey Centre for Global Initiatives and Send International of Canada in collaboration with other like-minded agencies. On behalf of the team, thanks for listening, and we invite you to join us again in 2 weeks when we'll continue to explore this grand adventure of being Christ's witnesses to the ends of the earth.